even name one verse
He
of the Bible.
He talked about
He cannot even.
2 Corinthians.
No,
You
even
know,
before that.
Yeah, 2
Corinthians.
You know, I'm a Muslim and I even
No,
know, and I even know there's no such thing as 2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians is
And,
what?
and that is why
Yeah.
when you start, when,
Corinthians are working.
when
As I believe it was like a child asked, like, when are we gonna have a female president? And even he said, if I don't know if you guys have seen on social
I've seen that on
media,
clip. He said when
and
you
he
have
even said you're gonna have, you know, someone's gonna select a woman to be vice
Yes.
president,
Yes.
and
So
he
that.
will die, and then she will become
I think the person who was saying that was the late Gerald Ford.
Ford.
Yes,
It
it
was
was
Ford.
right,
I
it was
said
him,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, Ford. So Ford's made that statement, and so that is very telling because you have to understand that he's coming from a perspective of understanding the apparatus. Typical.
Now, but the candidacy, of course, with all those endorsements that came in thick and fast right after Biden stepped down, there was no competitive process. So why was the party's establishment and President Biden so fast in moving to endorse her? You know, like were they trying to prevent, you know, like other people from coming in? Because that speed was not usual. Because stepping down to me is a very momentous announcement. It should be. It should have time on its own. But it was kind of like they were done together.
Sure.
Yeah.
because I think is that part of the question? Would that also be part of a question where that there's a process that should be followed, where you're supposed to have primaries, where she's supposed to compete, get into a ring, and then I book him.
So this is unprecedented
Because-
because this
because
is the first time that a presidential candidate is withdrawing less than 4 months
Yes.
to the general election. Lyndon Johnson withdrew, but he withdrew in March.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
the
it
thing.
was
The
very early.
timeline is so significant.
Yeah.
And then we also have to understand that there are a lot of odd things that are happening in this particular
Because
election.
somebody told me about that the Constitution was not followed. I'm still waiting for an answer about the Constitution.
Where
where it's
What constitution was not followed? But
No,
No. Let's let Annette answer it,
Yes.
and then we'll figure out
Yes.
where.
So
But you know what I'm talking about.
everything here is very, very unprecedented. Okay, so and it's not just the Democratic side. It's so easy to focus on that because that's what's happening right now. That's what's happened in less than a week, right? So Sunday will be a week. But even on the Republican side, we had a presumed candidate, and yet they still went through their primary process. And that was interesting because now these people, it's like, okay, what is the motive here? You're vying for this position. But it's very unlikely, it seemed from all of the polling, that any of them were going to surpass, Trump. At one point in time, I thought, like, maybe these people are competing for the VP position. I don't know. And so that is very unique because Trump didn't actually compete. He didn't do any of the debates.
Yeah.
He didn't. The only time he addressed people was via Twitter. And that is just not a
Twitter or Truth Social.
But it was okay.
Truth Social.
So he didn't even do one debate, right?
No, he
Not
didn't do
even
any
one.
debate. Yeah, no, he didn't.
Nothing. He did not engage with any of the people who were running against him. And so with that being the case, that is very odd. Is that really due process? Is that, so you could have the same question on the Republican side. Now, when it comes to what's happening with the Democrats, the truth of the matter is most of us don't actually know the nitty gritty of how these processes are done. It's not. We know what has historically happened. We know what traditionally happens, but there is some nuance there. And because even Biden was a presumed candidate for the ticket until he was officially put on the ballot by the DNC, right? So with that being the case, they both, I don't know. It's a fair assumption that the standing president, because that is what we've done historically, is going to be the nominee for the second term. But it doesn't always happen that way, and it doesn't have to happen that way. And so that's what we're seeing here. So we're seeing history unfold, and we're actually seeing the process happening the way that it was written out to happen. And because, the DNC hasn't happened, this can happen. Now, if it was after, it's not possible.
Now, to quickly interject, like when during the swearing-in of Biden, when Trump did not to hand over, I did some reading, and that's when I came to learn that a lot of things that you see in America are not constitutional. They're not necessarily in law. It's just norms. Like, for example, a president being the presumptive, a sitting president being the presumptive nominee. It's not a rule. It's not a law. It's not constitution. It's a norm.
It's the norm.
And even when it comes to parties picking a presidential candidate, I don't think the Constitution even mentions political parties.
It doesn't.
It doesn't mention political parties. So it's a political party that it's at their discretion within their own rules on what they want to do. And the political parties can change their own rules in the middle of the game. And that's, I think, what people need to understand, because sometimes people like throwing this word constitution too much. The American Constitution, unlike the Kenyan one, is so thin. It's like, I think, only 4 pages.
It's very easy to read.
Yeah, it's a very easy read. It's like only 4 pages, and it's very loose. So a lot of these things are within, the norms of the party. And when you go back to Lyndon Johnson not wanting to run for re-election back, I think that was in the 68 election, the one that Nixon won, the Democrats went and had what's called an open convention, where the convention is supposed to be where the party delegates select who the candidate will be. And traditional, it's been that way. But over time, the conventions became just a coronation. We already know who the winner is. It's kind of like a coronation, like it's Hillary Clinton or it's X. But traditionally, and in 1968, they had a very ugly convention. And I think the guy who won was called, I think, George McGovern, and he lost to Richard Nixon. The other open convention was when President Carter was, after his first term, he was challenged by JFK's brother. Robert Kennedy. I meant Bobby Kennedy. So that also became, no, Ted Kennedy.
Oh, my bad.
Ted is the name. Yeah, Ted is the name.
68, because Bobby 68.
Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy challenged Jimmy Carter, and it ended up very ugly. And Reagan ended up winning the following election. So I think after those experiences, both parties became gun shy of having, an open convention, because things can turn very ugly. I know the Democrats have about 4,600 delegates. And they are what they call 700 super delegates, whereby the rules are, if the 4,600 delegates will select who they want. If you get a majority, you become the candidate. If you do not get a majority, then the 700 super delegates are the ones who make a selection, and the super delegates are who's who in the party, the establishment people. So I think that's part of the reason why there's a bit of fear in taking it down to I think it's gonna be in Chicago this time, the Democratic Convention. So anyway, maybe you can give us your take on that. That's just a bit of the reading I was doing on why they never want those open conventions, where in Kenya we have people who are called men in black. I know you might not be familiar with that, but these are people who disrupt elections in a convention.
What
like if let's say Annette is a candidate we want to win, and we realize the way things are going, she's not winning. There are these people who are planted strategically to disrupt everything, throw down all the ballot boxes. So I don't know whether the Democrats have such people.
No, so we are in a time where we have the information. We have polling. We have the numbers. We can see who is leaning what way. The delegates actually meet before the actual event. And so that's part of the support that we're seeing, is that different groups, state by state. So the state of Maryland, they had a call, and they were like, okay, whatever discussion happened, if you're going to be a delegate. And so in the state of Maryland, I remember I think the Senate delegates, the state Senate delegates were the first ones to release a statement of support. And so as that continued to happen, then you start tallying up and seeing, okay, so the numbers are there for her. So assuming, even if it was that open situation, the numbers are indicating that she would be the one who's selected. Okay. And there are not a lot of people who are waiting to see if there's another option, because they have declared. So that is a significant thing that we need to understand about how this party is operating currently. And when you are in a time crunch, nobody wants chaos. Excuse me.
Yeah, and actually here Ruth was saying there's no time. We only have approximately 100 days to the election.
Yes.
We cannot afford dividing the party with so little time.
Yes, that's true. So you want to have some sort of consensus. Consensus so that you can continue to have messaging that is going to be powerful and effective as far as reaching the masses, right? Because now, the people who are the insiders, they have that's step one. And then after that, rallying behind a candidate. And then step two would be to get it to all of those who are unreached. That's really the most important part. When we come to this situation, it's interesting and unique because not only was the endorsement first given by Biden, which was, a signal for everyone to, nod accordingly. The swiftness shows us not only the understanding of the urgency, but then also when you look at the statements, we're talking about a candidate who is highly qualified, who has worked in all of the different branches of government. We're talking about a person where if you were to say we don't like her as the nominee for the Democratic Party, what would the reasoning be? That's the question, you know? So anyone who is aspiring would have to say, I'm the better candidate compared to her because, and it's very hard to do that with a VP. We have a lot of presidents who previously were vice presidents.
Yes.
So with that precedence, it's a very difficult argument to make. And so I think that is a big reason why people are falling in line. I remember when the announcement was first made, I was seeing who was endorsing. The Clintons were pretty quick to endorse.
Yeah, Hillary was fast.
Hillary was fast.
Yeah, she
very
did not
fast.
waste time.
The person who shocked me was the Obamises. They
So
took some time.
as of today,
Yeah, they took
As
some
of
time.
No. They took time.
yes, they took
no,
time.
I think it
as
was
of today,
suspense.
they
Kuna suspense hapo.
Suspense.
As of today,
Waliniangusha
they've
hapo.
Yeah.
and they kind of had the nod.
When Mike is putting the typical Kenyan tabia of everything has to be a conspiracy.
Oh, no.
I think within the party we were wondering.
Calculated moves.
No, I just said they took a bit too long, but carry on.
I think in the party we were wondering, like you look to see
Thank
so
you.
whoever your leadership is. So
Thank you.
if you're in California and you like Gavin Newsom, if you are somewhere else and you look to the people, some people who are not in New York look to AOC and see what she's saying. If you look to your leadership or the person that you admire or look up to for direction and they're not saying anything, then you wonder, like, okay, what's that about? Is there something going on? And so, but that doesn't mean that there's a conspiracy. It just means that it's natural to wonder what people are going to do and when their endorsements are going to come. AOC did endorse fairly quickly. And so we do have the Obama's endorsement as well. And so this is going to be very interesting. It looks like, this is a sure thing. She's officially done her candidacy. There's a lot of, I guess, procedural things that are going to happen leading up to getting her officially. Right now, if you're reporting on her, she is the presumed candidate. But let's remember that even if we did have multiple candidates, like the same way the Republicans did up until this point, we still know that people tend to drop out when they realize that the numbers are not in their favor.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a natural progression of things. And so you let things play out as the way as they should. You have the debates if you're having the debates. Or you campaign however you do so. But slowly but surely people look at their numbers and they concede and they say they might not officially, which, there's some technicalities. They might not officially drop out, but they may make a statement of support for someone,
I'm suspended.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of
Never
Republicans did
understood
that
yeah.
recently. So they'll suspend their campaign and they'll, talk about how great their campaign was and say, we hope to see so and so, or maybe they'll say so and so, like, the Republicans might need to earn my endorsement by, doing X, Y, Z, whatever the statements.
Or like
be.
Nikki Haley.
Yeah. So
No.
like either both sides
Yeah.
do this. This is not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. This is just kind of.
And
how
actually,
it's gone.
Nikki Haley kind of predicted
She did.
Yeah.
She
in
February.
specifically
said. I don't know that it was a Freudian slip or it was.
She said that with her full chest. She was very confident. When she said we are going to have a woman president, she said we are going to have a woman president, and it's either going to be me or Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
And that was quite a poignant
statement.
Another thing that was very interesting was that Ford previously being asked, I believe it was like a child asked, like, when are we going to have a female president? And even he said, I don't know if you guys have seen on social media.
I've seen that on clip. He said when you have,
even said you're gonna have, someone's gonna select a woman to be vice president, and he will die, and then she will become.
I think the person who was saying that was the late Gerald Ford.
Yeah, Ford.
Yes,
it was Ford. I said that. Yeah, Ford.
Mm-hmm.
So Ford made that statement, and so that is very telling because you have to understand that he's coming from a perspective of understanding the apparatus, right? That is at hand. There's a system that is at hand, and so from his perspective, this is how it happens. This is how we ease into that, And so it turns out that it happened that way. We had an opportunity to not have it happen that way when Clinton ran. We also had another opportunity when Kamala Harris ran against Joe Biden, and so. It's turning out to be exactly as predicted is one of those interesting coincidences.
Yeah. Let me read a few comments here. Ulrika Bernard says, Libedawi, that's because VP Kamala is his vice, so naturally she's next in line. We were already past the primary and all the money from donors goes straight to her. No one else can get it, but regardless, no one else is more qualified than her. Then we have Urimadenge who says, how do you believe we can encourage our young generation to vote and also help them understand that it's not just presidency, but all elected seats? So you're going to answer that? Yeah. So you're going to, let's just pause. You're going to answer that question. Ulrika Bernard says, TikTok, that's the fastest and simplest way to move people in numbers. And the Gen Z has that on lock. And then Evans Marube says, very true. American Constitution has loopholes. Any Dick and Harry can run for presidency with no public record. Trump, with no public office, ran away with the presidency. No checks. A felon can be a president. The Constitution is shallow on executive. And then Luis Muya says another factor is also funding funds. Another factor is also funding. Funds raised by Biden-Harris campaign cannot be transferred to another nominee. And then Ruth says they endorsed her earlier in the week. Stephen JJ says Bernie Sanders is yet to endorse as well. And then Ulrika Bernard says we already knew the Obamas were going to endorse. I don't get why everyone was so pressed to have it right away when we haven't even hit DNC yet. And then Ulrika says, can we all discuss how brainworms should drop out too? Because why dilute the vote? And then Ulrika Bernard says Nikki Haley is a whole flip-flop. She goes with the wind inherently. I don't think she's MAGA, but she had to fall in line to keep her place. So let's go back to Udi's interesting question. How do you believe we can encourage our young generation to vote and also help them understand that it's not the presidency only, but all elected seats? Annette.
I like to focus on down ballot, all elected seats. I like to focus on judges. There is a statistic out there that says that most people who are going to, well, basically what it implies is that people are more likely to engage in behaviors that, might have you encountering the police, crimes, petty theft, those type of things in their younger years. And then as you get older, you're less likely to have those type of interactions. We get older, we mellow out, which means that young people are very likely to pay attention to what's going on when it comes to policing, reforms around that, and then what's going on as far as judges is the one thing that might get missed, but is super, super important for that demographic specifically, because you're more likely to have some of those encounters, just statistically, not saying anything, but we all know that when we're young, we think we're invincible, It's more likely to see the younger person speeding down the highway than it is to see an old man. That's just kind of some facts that we have there. And so that is something that we can focus on, are the things that they're encountering on a regular basis. But I wouldn't be too discouraged, just because based off of the activism that's happening within Gen Z, here in the U.S., but also globally, there is clearly a galvanization of this population in a way that hasn't happened in recent history. And so not necessarily the excitement, the engagement that we're seeing here leads us to believe that there is going to be a bigger voter turnout. Now, this demographic is very interesting from a statistical standpoint because they're trickier to gauge
Influence,
what they're
yeah.
going to do. You know, they're a little bit of a wild card because you don't have the history. Now, those of us who have voted in 2, 3 elections, honestly, even just the one, then there's some statistical information that says you're very likely to vote this way based off of your previous voting history, right? For them, we don't have that. Some of them, this is going to be their first election being involved at all. So encouraging them is it's really about focusing on issues that affect them. And it's a very, it's something that people take for granted sometimes, but I don't think this administration can afford to take Gen Z for granted.
Yes. Yeah, that will be very important. Now, another question here. Do you think the Republicans were a bit too quick to pull the trigger on selecting the vice president? And I think they had to select one because they had their convention happening. I don't know that it's a requirement to select a VP candidate prior to the convention, but it looks like they picked a VP from a state that's already solidly Republican.
Ohio.
Yeah. J.D. Vance.
I'm going to say
so
this
do
again.
you think that might have been a bit too quick, with, of course, in hindsight, not knowing that this change was going to happen of Kamala Harris being the Democratic nominee for president?
I'm just going to say that the Republicans know what they're doing. When it comes to some of these decisions, they're very well organized. They've been considering this since Trump lost. Who would be the next person? J.D. Vance is not just anybody. He's a member of the Heritage Foundation. He is somebody who got into politics suspiciously recently and then now is the VP pick. That was not by accident, okay? This is a person who needed to have some sort of political background in order to be an eligible person for this position, and so he did just that. I wouldn't say that this was haphazardly done at all. This was done on purpose. I don't know their thinking or their purpose behind it, but I wouldn't put that. Now, did they prepare for him being the pick and then now dealing with Kamala Harris? And right now we don't have a presumed VP pick for that ticket, and that's something that we're going to be awaiting for the next couple of days. So am I going to be unplugging? No, because the next time I unplug is when they're going to they're going to pick a VP, and then
Yeah, and the VP, what white dude is going to be picked for
why
the VP?
the white dude statement?
No, because it's going to be a white dude.
Politics is a
yeah.
Omosh.
Yeah,
No.
I mean,
Let's see what Omosh thinks.
Let's be honest.
Let's be honest about it. Let's talk about it.
Let's be honest. This is America. You have a black woman who's running for president. There's no way.
Excuse me.
There's no way.
Boss. Excuse me.
There's no.
The right, and very many people say she's not black.
Okay. Well.
I mean, she's the only person
that's
who can
the-
say what
that's
she
the
is.
Usinterrupt mtu kupeana propaganda tafadhali kama.
So I think
But it's true.
you can't pick a Hakeem Jeffries. You can't pick a Hakeem Jeffries, for example,
Okay.
who would be a very qualified, like running mate,
Or Westmore.
or Westmore. You can't pick a Westmore or a Hakeem
But
Jeffries.
I think I'll echo what my governor said. Westmore very recently on an interview spoke to that, and he said that for him that is definitely a big consideration that's out there, and we have to be realistic in the country that we're in, right? But the part that he said was he was told the same thing when he was running, and he made a choice, and it was a woman, someone who is an immigrant,
Yeah.
and someone who is a person of color, and so that was not the quote unquote ideal choice. He should have had.
That was a gutsy choice, actually.
It was a very bold choice,
Yeah.
but he picked the person that he thought he could run best with and could work best with. And Aruna Miller is a wonderful individual. I've had the opportunity to interact with her on multiple occasions, and so with just echoing that, I would say that I agree with Westmore in that you want to pick the person that you're going to work best with. However, there is the reality that we're not just talking about one state. We're talking about the entire country. And so getting galvanizing people around the entire country and having 2 people of color in the White House, that would be very, very challenging. And so it's already a challenging situation, and more than likely she's going to pick somebody who is going to be a white male, and maybe one day that will not yes, and hopefully that's not going to be the case for too many years to come, that we see a bit more diversity. But I happened to do a White House visit recently, and I went with my little people, and one of them stated, after there's a like a welcome center, and you see all of the presidents down there, and the statement was, they're all boys. Why are they all boys? So I'm very much looking forward to the day that is different and going back.
Wow,
But
we're in very interesting times.
Umemaliza kuulizia swali ya who's the best pick?
Now the
VP.
Yeah, I mean the VP pick. Like I have 2 people I have in mind. I could be entirely wrong, because I'm thinking in terms of someone who could bring power to a state.
Where to appear your 2 people, and then you tell us why.
Yeah. So the 2 people I have, number 1, I have or rather number 2, I have the current governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. Who's in his mid to late 60s. But I think North Carolina right now, it's kind of leaning Republican, but that's a potential state that could become toss-up if the right moves are made, because they have a Democrat governor, so they could potentially vote for a Democratic candidate for president. I think the downside is that he's older, and then to me, my second pick is the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro. That's another part of the blue wall, Pennsylvania. It's very important. If this was Kenya, I would shift and I would carry people. In Kenya, what people do when people shift. If Annette is running in the next constituency, we'll all shift and go register there, so that we can go vote. Yeah, I live less than an hour from the Pennsylvania line, so and that's a very rural part of Pennsylvania. So I think that's going to be a very, very important state, because to me, the 3 states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and which was the third one, Michigan, those are critically important.
What about Georgia?
To me, at this point, if we win Georgia, to me it's a steal. Although with Kamala coming in, because Georgia had started leaning Republican by the polls. So if we win Georgia, I think with Kamala, with all the activation of black people in registering and wanting to vote for her, so Georgia may come into play. But for me, Georgia, just like it was a steal during Biden's time, I will still consider it a steal. It's not a state that I would count on so much. There's the Arizona guy, I'm forgetting his name, Kelly. Yeah, Arizona is still also kind of leaning Republican, which is why I would stick to the North Carolina guy and to the Pennsylvania guy. The Pennsylvania guy is a bit young. I think he's in his early 50s. So those are my picks. But then, this has been a year of surprises.
It has.
Who knows?
Ali,
I
agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you on Shapiro. That for me, based on, like as you said, everything that you look at it, I agree on Shapiro, because I think Shapiro can help with those Rust Belt states. And let's be honest, it's gonna be he fits the YT dude, and his age is not that gone too much. He's not, so he can appeal to both the older, because the reason we want a YT guy, and especially a YT guy who's middle-aged and going up, is for the white older voters. That demographic is the demographic we want. And then we also want a demographic with somebody that's coming from those Rust Belt states, those working states, the states that have iron mining and all that stuff. And with him, we know that iron mining is a big thing in Pennsylvania. That is one of the things that Biden actually, one of the positives from Biden. He revived that industry. So if this is a governor who comes from a state that was revived, and he knows the importance of it. So he clearly can motivate and stimulate the Rust Belt voters, who are also very important in terms of stealing, on making steals on that demographic. So for me, Shapiro is the one that I look. I look at all the Democrats that have been fronted. I look is good. Michigan, it would have been good, but you cannot have a all women ticket. You cannot have two women
the
running
Michigan
for VP.
governor. Yeah. What
we
about
we cannot have those two.
what about is he the transport cabinet secretary Pete Buttigieg?
Buttigieg.
No.
Buttigieg.
That one, it will be a turnoff to most of the YT voters, especially the older YT voters.
Yeah, why, Annette, are you shaking your head? Like, don't you think that he might?
I am a
where
fan
is he from?
of
He's
him.
from. Is he from Iowa?
I'm a fan of him.
Yeah.
He ran he also
And
ran
it
at
was an
one
interesting
point.
campaign.
It was a very interesting campaign. It did appeal to the younger voter, and so I have, I respect the campaign that he ran. Now that he's dealing with transportation, he did come to the state of Maryland, unfortunately, when we had the bridge collapse, and has actually garnered a pretty good reputation across the nation when it comes to him fulfilling his role in that particular right now. And so the reason I'm shaking my head is just because he's not going to do, like, these things are strategic. You don't pick haphazardly. So when Obama picked Biden, there was a lot of thought about that, and it's not like something where you go and you pick your best friend and you're like, hey, let's go, we work well together. It's not like that.
Like the Kenyan handshake.
No, it's none of that. The people you like,
Dang
they end up,
haters.
maybe they might get a role that they want, but they're not going to be the VP pick. And so it's very strategic. You want someone like everything that has been said. I agree about galvanizing certain demographics and also to lighten the load. So Kamala Harris can only be in one place at one time. When you have your VP pick, then now you can start splitting the nation and going and visiting different places at the same time. And so, you need to have like 2, 3, 4 touches, which is like interactions that an individual has with your campaign in order to garner their support if they did not have your support in the beginning, right? And in Kamala Harris's situation, she is new, and so she has to, make a lot of efforts for those who are undecided. But something that is also going to be affected by her VP pick is, again, the new voter registration. So when this announcement was made and the endorsement was made, we had thousands of individuals go online and figure out how they can register to vote. There's never been a registration drive that has garnered.
So that was just a reaction to the announcement.
A reaction.
Yes. Wow. Okay.
So people were like, "Oh, what? He's stepping down? Am I registered to vote? I need to
Go check.
I need to figure this out.
And
Yeah.
it was like
Register.
38,000 people, or
Yeah,
however many.
40,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
amount of people who individually made that decision. And I mean, there was no get out the vote campaign that happened immediately after.
Yeah.
This was unsolicited. This was people saying, I'm taking the initiative and doing that. And so the VP pick can do that as well. If she picks someone that excites people, then you're going to have more people do voter registrations. And we know statistically that new voters lean independent and Democrat, right? And so that doesn't mean that new voters can't be Republicans, but Republicans just have a culture of registering to vote like immediately as soon as you are qualified in the state. And so their numbers are very solid. And that's why Trump doesn't have to do a lot of work. Like, he knows what his base is, and he also knows that everyone who is Republican, for the most part, they're going to support him. They're going to vote for him. And so he doesn't have to do that much work. His rallies are more like inspirational meetings as opposed to talking about what the party is going to do and issues and things like that. The Democratic Party is very distinctly different because it's very issues focused, but we also needed some galvanizing. We also needed some inspiration. And so Harris did bring that. There's a new momentum. And so she's going to want to pick somebody who is going to continue that momentum and up the ante.
Okay, comments here coming in. Ulrika Bernard says, what's happening in the U.S. right now is a great first step to get people involved. A lot of folks don't understand the chess in the game. They only see the checkers. We need the House and the Senate. But most of all, you need to vote for local election because that's what directly affects your life. From your cops on the street to the conditions of the roads, Kamala matters, but your local elections matter more because she can't get much done without the folks that follow her. And then Award Joanne says Westmore wants to run for president. And then Ulrika Bernard says Westmore is great, but he's new. Hakim is amazing, but an all-black ticket will guarantee a loss. Maybe Shapiro because he's ready to throw hands. And then Awar says Shapiro or Bashir. I don't know about Bashir. Bashir is the governor for Kentucky.
Yes.
I don't know. I know he can be good in getting, the Rust Belt, but Kentucky in itself is not a battleground state. And then
battleground state.
Yeah.
Old white voters. We need to steal some numbers.
We need to steal them. Okay.
Yes.
Evan says Pennsylvania has been on the news lately from Trump's unfortunate events to pick Governor Shapiro. Pennsylvania is a swing state, but is always critical. And then Stephen JJ says Governor of Pennsylvania, Joe Shapiro. Esther Mulusa. Esther, tell us where you're watching us from. That place that you call Shimalavandu or whatever the name. Tell us where you're tuned in from. And then Udi Madenge says Georgia is going Dems. I am not sure, Udi. I hope it does.
On the ground in Georgia,
yeah,
Udi is right.
No, I hope it does. But
let me tell you the rhetoric when you're there.
Yeah.
Even the ads you see.
No, I agree with you. Of course, if you're in Atlanta,
it's a totally different animal.
But
if you're in Atlanta,
let me give you because I see where Ali is coming from, right? Remember, Georgia Democrats are in two places: Atlanta and what's the name of this? The Beach,
Savannah.
Savannah.
Yeah,
those two places. That is where the numbers are.
Yes.
Now, the rest of rural Georgia, right? Rural Georgia is where the problem is.
Big
and
problem.
That is why you see I keep insisting on we need to cut a chunk of that old white people vote. Because now that Biden has gone, we have lost it to Trump. He controls it right now. Biden took a chunk of it from him.
No.
So we need a VP who's good. So, and in Georgia, which the elections usually, remember, how they're campaigning in Georgia. They're campaigning in Georgia, they're telling him, look, our leader is being crucified by these people who we allowed in our place, our home. Because they still see black people as slaves there, as working.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's why they look at it, it's being done here. So we need to make sure that this place, we sanctify it and make it clean for our leader to be safe. So they are coming in numbers. The rhetoric they're pushing out there is totally different from anti-CG national politics. For them, they're being told, if they can crucify Trump, what stops them from taking over the state from us?
Now, Georgia, according, there's how the ground feels, and there's also what the polls are saying. And the polls have also, it's become more difficult to poll over the years.
Georgia is very tough to poll.
Georgia,
until you see that thing.
Georgia.
So I hear all of that.
So Georgia, according to the Cook Political Report, it's not even a toss-up. It has it leaning Republican, but it's something that can, because typically the margin of error is 3. So if it's within 3%, it will be listed as a toss-up. If it's more than 3%, it's gonna go towards leaning. So it's not like Georgia cannot come back. I believe it might come back to toss-up once we have newer polls coming in. Because like Michigan now is tied. Michigan is now tied. Kamala Harris and Biden was down by 3 points. So I think within a week, within 2 weeks, we're going to start seeing some shifts.
I just like to say about Atlanta.
Yeah.
Atlanta is when it comes to what you're seeing on the ground, what you're feeling, and what the rhetoric is, whether you are in in the country or whether you're in the cities, one thing about Georgia is that the Republican Party has made its best due diligence effort to make sure that voter suppression is the norm there. And so you have to understand some of the nuances in how voting happens in the state of Georgia. Georgia is one of the places that Trump called up and said, hey, we need to figure out these numbers. Like,
give him a number.
Georgia is one of those places, right? Because he has friends over there, and also there's an understanding of how they do elections in Georgia. And so if you are in Georgia, one thing that I would say is, of course, get out and vote, and
make sure you're on the rolls.
Make sure that you're registered to vote, but then also don't stop paying attention, for the next 4 years after this. There are grassroots movements that are trying to change the laws so that these types of tactics are no longer acceptable in the state of Georgia, and that the representation can actually reflect those who live within the state.
Okay. All right. And then Awar here says Wisconsin will be out on the road to the White House. I don't know exactly what that means. Use simple English, Awar. Wisconsin will be out on the road to the White House. Use simple English, or maybe say it in Kiswahili, because I don't know what exactly that means. And then Grizzly Proxy says Buttigieg being a VP would give Trump a landslide victory. And then Apa Kenyan Jui is coming with some compliments. Kenyan Jui karibu sana. He says, I have always been unapologetic paragasha for Annette, a smart, eloquent woman. My question is, when are you running for local office? Bust a move, mama. So I don't know that that's a question or whether it was a statement.
That Kenyan.
No, that is also a question I've always wanted to ask.
Okay, let's pause there. No, let's pause there. Annette, any plans? Any plans?
What are your political?
No,
the
because
voice. Oh gosh, the voice.
Because you're within the local Democratic establishment in Baltimore County. You've worked for a county executive who's now running for U.S. Congress.
Wow.
Yes. So what are we looking? I know this is 2024. This may be a bit close, but is there anything you're looking at in the near future? Do you want to make an announcement? Maybe start looking for paid staffers, an exploratory committee, volunteers.
I think when that time comes, I will make a point to announce on this forum.
Okay.
On this platform?
All right.
On this platform.
Good.
I will come and announce.
Annette is the original boots on the ground.
Yes, absolutely.
Like when you say somebody has put in work, she's the original boots on the ground. Like if you want an example of how political canvassing can be done or anything, just learning how to get involved in politics, and that is one of those. And the one thing that I like about what Annette does, it gets noticed. And I will tell you, this is one of those conversations where I do have a bunch of friends that I made when I was in that app called Clubhouse, who are younger, Annette's demographic and generation. And guess what? Right now, they're the ones who are on the booth on the ground canvassing and teaching people about local elections and registering to vote. And that is why I'm also enthusiastic about Kamala's
candidacy,
because remember when Obama came out and was running, young people are the ones actually who came out, black people came out and registered and voted. And it's the same thing that's happening right now in this social media. When you look out, even if you see if you see people who are checking the rhetoric from Republicans, it's black people with funny memes and everything, but they're checking them with facts. It's a meme, but it comes with the fact, and then guess what? They start a conversation and they teach each other, they tell each other, go register for voting because this is what's going to happen. It wasn't happening when Papa Joe was on. She's brought it out, and it's because of the young folks like Annette that we can say that this country might be saved.
Okay.
Because this election was taking this country in a very bad direction.
All right.
So Mika, are you saying that my pick for VP, Michelle Obama, is a no-go? I'm just asking.
No, it's all jokes. Those are big jokes that people like me.
That's my pick.
Yeah. Those are nice jokes.
I'm voting with my heart.
Almost, let me ask you.
Yes.
why do people want to force Michelle into politics when her herself doesn't want that?
Me,
Because remember, Michelle had a chance to be in politics when she was young in college.
correct.
And she took a different direction and allowed Barack to go with the political direction. Why do people want to force her to go to a route she doesn't want to go? She's never spoken or said that she wants to do that.
Because her kids are grown now,
No,
and
no,
we want her
even
to run.
no, even forget about that. Even if she did run,
Yes.
Michelle would not win. And I'm sorry to burst people's bubble. She would not win.
Very well.
These are nice things that people say, but when you go to the nuts and bolts of politics, it's things are very different. I know that's
things
a
in
popular
politics are not that
thing.
nice.
I've been hearing it on WhatsApp groups and people like talking, oh, if Michelle would have run this and that. No, like that would not
That
have
would have
happened.
been a lost. That the first Tuesday of November.
Yes.
That would have been a loss. The Republicans would have won the election by 8 a.m.
To buttress your point,
Yes.
Democrats want to fall in love, Republicans fall in line.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfectly
Absolutely. And I
That's
think
So is that why Democrats are always nice and
Democrats-
and Republicans step on your neck even when you're down and you can't breathe?
No, the thing with Democrats will heavily criticize, like there's no perfect candidate, but they will heavily criticize a qualified person. Republicans have Trump. Someone
Very
who has
qualified.
felonies,
And that is why-
someone who has rape allegations,
And that is why-
but they will fall in line.
It's just dirty and
and that
nasty.
And then when you ask them, why do you support Trump? Oh, President Trump is gonna fix this country.
He's gonna drain the swamp.
That is the only answer.
Yeah.
That is the only answer they have.
And that
Our
is-
Nanga is on the
And that
What
is why-
about the economy? It starts during no. President Trump is the best president ever. For them, the cult.
And that is what
For them, it's like a cult. They don't really care about CG policy. Alisha Sama is chasing away the Muslims. He's chasing away the immigrants. He's gonna close the border. No more immigrants are gonna come in.
Okay.
And he's gonna uphold the Bible. He's half a candidate.
Okay.
and by the way,
yeah.
even to make us point, he can't even name one verse
He
of the Bible.
He talked about
He cannot even.
2 Corinthians.
No,
You
even
know,
before that.
Yeah, 2
Corinthians.
I'm a Muslim and I even
No,
know. And I even know there's no such thing as 2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians is
And,
what?
and that is why
Yeah.
when you start
Two Corinthians are working.
when and that is why at the beginning of the show when you talked
Yeah.
about when I talked about how I was still in support of what was irking me a lot was how the there was a self
Self annihilation.
maze when you see how it doesn't matter who on the Republican side it doesn't matter. Nikki Haley has fallen in line, Lindsey Graham fallen in line, Marco Rubio, all those idiots in 2016 were saying what? Were saying one thing. Right now they're falling in line. Nikki Haley herself at one point in time was like, this guy I'll not kiss the ring. What
Fall
did she
in
do?
line.
And
She
that's
fell
what
in line.
Hogan is going to do.
You
Yeah.
sure?
I am certain that Larry Hogan, if he wins his Senate seat, right now he has ads going
Oh, yeah,
out
he's gonna
saying
yeah,
that
he's gonna
not
toe
going to
the
take
line.
away reproductive rights. He's not going to do this. He's not going to do that. I have not heard a single Trump criticism from him since he announced his candidacy.
Correct.